what I have said is the reason I wanted to do this was that I would want them to know and to find
Mm-hmm.
God,
Mm-hmm.
to know that He does exist,
Mm-hmm.
and people in general. I guess this would be called my journey to find God.
Okay.
I don't know, there could be another name for it that you could give it. At any rate, when I was a boy, approximately 5.5, 6 years old, my mother and two sisters lived in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My mother had just been divorced and moved down to Florida because my grandfather lived there.
And what was his name?
Pardon?
What was his name?
Well, I call him Poppy.
Mm-hmm.
His name was George Broadus Bryan, but to me he was Poppy, and my grandmother was Granny, and they lived in actually in several homes in Fort Lauderdale during the years. Anyway, they also lived in Washington, D.C. They had a home in Washington, D.C., where I was born. At any rate, my mother asked me if I would go to church to have communion, or I think communion is what to you?
Where you take the bread and the juice?
Okay.
You mean baptism?
No, this is before. This is.
Oh, like you take the classes?
Pardon?
Like, where you take the classes?
No. It's before you join. It's joining the church, becoming a member of the church, or joining the church.
It does start with a C. I can't remember what it's called. You're right, though.
Casey knows.
Yeah, he probably does.
Okay. At any rate, I was to become a member of the church,
Mm-hmm.
Baptist church, in
Oh, confirmation?
confirmation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And my mother had purchased new shoes, new pants, gotten a haircut for me and everything. I was all ready to go. And the day of confirmation, Sunday, she asked me if I would take our little dog Waggy out and then across the street to a vacant lot to do its business. And while she got my sisters ready for church, I said yes. I always liked that because the church was, or the vacant lot was next to a canal that had boats in it, and I always liked looking at the boats and stuff. So I took Waggy out and crossed the street and started coming back when her mother called. George, time to go, and Waggy heard that and took off ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
She was not on a leash. And as we approached the street going across to our house, Waggy ran ahead and was run over by a car and killed immediately. I was only 10 feet away or less from being the victim. And I was devastated. I just, at that particular time, I looked up in the sky. I remember this very well. I looked up in the sky and screamed at God. I said, if you are really there, because I was just a kid and I thought all this stuff about the Bible and all, I thought that was fairy tales, you know, I didn't really believe in anything. I said, if you're really there, then why did you do this on a Sunday to my dog? And after that, I would not go to church. I would not go to anything to do with religion, even though I love my grandfather a great deal, and was basically doing it for him. I couldn't bear going to church. I would go, I think one time I remember, because he was preaching. He was not a preacher, but the preacher was sick and he took over for him. At any rate, a few months or 6 months or so later, we, Candy, Nancy, and Mother and I moved back to Maryland, or to Washington, D.C. And Mother remarried. And she went to a Methodist church there for a while and then stopped that, I don't know why. And she sent me to a Presbyterian church. And I was supposed to go to church every Sunday by myself, not with my brother, because they were Catholics. And my Uncle Charlie, who was her husband, was Catholic, and he didn't go to church either. So.
What about your sisters?
My sister Margie went to Catholic church. Nancy, I'm sure went, but I don't know exactly because I was still pretty young. I don't remember why it was just me going to the Presbyterian church. Anyway, I went there. I went to the Sunday school, and I, was not impressed with it. I didn't want to be there, but I did learn something. On the way in church, there was a hallway, and it had baskets that people put donations in. Well, I learned how to pick $1 out of there,
I didn't know that.
go to the People's Drugstore and buy myself a chocolate bar. Every Sunday I would do this.
Wow.
I didn't go to church. I went to People's Drugstore and got my candy bar and came home.
I've never heard that story.
Yeah. Now you're hurt. So I did that for quite a while. And finally I grew up, and I didn't have to go to church anymore. I never went, except I had, it, I don't know exactly what age I got sick and had to go to live in Florida for a year.
And what were you sick with?
I had a bronchitis type of breathing sickness, which the doctor said he either has to go to Florida or to Arizona.
Hey. Hey.
And so I lived down there with Poppy for some time and became more and more attached to him because now I was older and I would go to church occasionally there, especially if this young lady was going to church. I didn't like them. They had this I closed the door. I didn't necessarily, I don't,
What was the girl's name? Do you remember?
I can remember it years later. It comes back every now and then. Actually, at any rate, I came back and I totally disavowed myself from church or anything else. And I got married to Grandma Monique, and we moved to actually we went to an apartment building and lived there for about 6 months, and then we purchased an apartment building and lived there. And when we lived there, we lived in, we had your mom,
Randy.
Uncle Randy, and Aunt Michelle, and they all lived. Why don't we do this some other time? I don't know.
Is it too much?
Huh? Well, it's so noise. I can't concentrate.
Okay, just living in an apartment, and you had all your kids.
Okay. At that particular time, I was drinking quite a bit. I went out with who I call now, get out of here, today, Uncle Dave, Garrick, not Uncle Dave West. And we used to go out every night and drink. Well, at one point before this happened, I decided to quit drinking and quit smoking because I read an article in Reader's Digest about smoking and stuff, and I just quit entirely, and quit for 6 months or so, or for a length of time. And one day, some Mormon missionaries came to the house and asked if they could tell us about Mormonism. And I had previously been, when I used to go down to visit Aunt Nancy in St. Louis, I would go through the Mormon town of, I can't think of the name of the town.
I don't know.
It's right on the Mississippi. Anyway, I learned about Joseph Smith and there, and so I just went through his house and stuff like that, and I said, yeah, I told him point blank, I'm not interested in the religion, I'm interested in learning about different cultures and different religions and stuff like that, but I'm not religious myself. And he said, okay, so they talked to me and they talked to Monique and everything and told us about Joseph Smith and the trek to Utah and all that. And very interesting. And they finished and said, would you like to join the church? And I said, well, no, as I told you before, I want just to learn about the religion and different cultures and stuff like that. And he said, well, okay, that's fine, but I said, or he said, Ned Karen was his name. He said, just before he left, he was ready to walk out, he said, if you really want to know if there's a God or not, you can pray and you'll, you're distracting me. Sorry.
It's okay.
You can pray. And I said, yeah, sure, okay. Big deal. Well, at this particular time, I always felt, I don't know the right word. I love my grandfather very much, and I felt a responsibility to him and, you know, to his thinking. So about a week later, I had been thinking about it, and I said, well, one night I'll pray. So at that particular night, we're on a hideaway bed. You know what a hideaway bed is? We're on a hideaway bed, Mom and I, and I'm laying back on the bed with sitting up like this, and I start praying. All of a sudden, see, I don't know how to, vision, a personage came in front of me from here to that wall. And he said, can what do you want, or, you know, I said, I want to know if God is real. if there is a God, and he says, yes, there is, and he starts walking across the room towards me. When he comes across the room, we lived in a home. We had what they call, what do they call them? A bunch of windows together.
Bay window?
Pardon?
A bay window?
A bay window, right. I think there were 2, 3, or 4 windows. And this personage had to cross those bay windows. When he crossed there, he bounced. I say bounced. He went to the ceiling type, came back up, went down, up, down, until he reached from here to the end of this couch to me. And he stopped and looked, and I said, well, here I'm having an illusion, you know, I'm having a dream. And I thought, well, it's not real. And so I started sitting up. Now, it was something like this, the couch. I'm sitting up now, and I go like this, because he's here, right? I go like this, but I missed the couch, and I go, my head drops. And I wake up entirely.
Mm-hmm.
The personage is still there. And he says, would you like to know more? At that particular time, I was so exhausted from what had been going on. I said, and thought, well, I'll find out when I go, I'll join the church and I'll find out more at the church, and I won't have to go any further. And I said, no, thank you, and he disappeared. So, the next day, I called these young men. They hadn't given me their phone number. And I called them and I said, I'd like to join the church. And said, fine. Then somebody from the church came out. I talked to him. And they went back to the church and said, this one guy said, no, he's not ready.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Huh?
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. And I, yeah, that's too bad. But Ned and the other fella came back to tell me, or I told them, and they went and appealed to the higher ups in the church, and the church had a meeting and said he can join.
I'm going to stop you right there for just a minute.
Yeah. The guy that said no, he can't join because he's not good enough, he turns out and has an affair with his secretary. The guy who I really adored, I mean, this guy was neat. He was a lawyer, humorous, just the perfect person, right? He winds up being convicted of, he was a lawyer and he had absconded $40,000 from one of his clients.
Wow.
Was convicted for it, never went to jail for it, but was convicted, and his could no longer practice law. And then in different situations, it was all about the people being friendly to make money.
Right.
So, I mean, it was the wolf.
Right.
It was the whole.
Right. So you said you had trouble You said you had trouble distinguishing between the true believer, the person who wanted to be a believer, and the wolf, and that's what makes it hard to be in church for you.
Extremely hard.
I understand that. Because you're right. I think you're exactly right. There's those three.
Yeah.
And the fourth might be someone who doesn't really want to believe, but they feel like they're supposed to come, and so they just come.
Okay.
There's that kind of person too.
I think you can group them.
You probably could.
Yeah. But that's where I stand now. What else?
It's up to you. What else about the story? So where are you now? Why don't you answer that question?
Pardon?
Where are you now as far as faith and religion goes?
I know there is, without a doubt, and I do my very best to conduct my life in the manner in which I feel would be accepted by him. I do drink, but I don't drink excessively. I believe that Jesus drank.
His first miracle was turning water into wine.
Yes. So I don't feel any guilt in that respect. I do my very best to think only of the best of people and hope for the best for them, to love them, not necessarily trust them,
Right.
but to love and hopefully get along. But there's all sorts of people in the world, and it's very hard at times to determine. And we all go astray to some extent. I don't know how I could add on to
Okay.
what I've said.
And what's your hope for your children as far as knowing God goes? What's your hope for your children?
That they find him and know that he exists, and that they follow his path, Jesus' path, or the path that he would want, which is basically to love thy neighbor. It's a simple thing that to me is expounded by all the scriptures and stuff, but to love thy neighbor as I love thyself, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I would hope that they would follow these simple guidelines his, not mine. All my children, all my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, the whole works, you know, that they would find him and know that he does exist. And this is, oh,